Yeah.
All right, all. So welcome. It's about 11, so we will just let Jim get going. I really appreciate him doing this for us, and so just kind of sit back and relax for the next about an hour. And Jim, you are host now, so you do whatever you need.
All right. Thank you. Let me make sure I get this set up. Sorry, y'all. My computer is relatively new, but it does not act like it's new. It's my little turtle. Okay, now what's happening? Oh.
Yes, we can see your screen now perfectly.
Okay. All right, great. Okay. So, all right. I guess I'll go ahead and start then. So thank you, Maggie, for contacting me and inviting me. And Maggie, I'll make sure that I send at least you a copy of the presentation so that you can forward that to anybody that would particularly like to receive that. Okay, so who am I? Well, not really that important, but I guess a little bit. As far as what do I do? Well, I've got basically three main roles at UCA. One of them is staff psychologist and training director, which means that my two primary functions in the counseling center, one to provide therapy to the students at UCA, and the second is to recruit, hire, train, supervise graduate students from the master's and the doctoral program, so that they can come over here and basically have an opportunity under supervision to develop their skills. I've been at UCA since 1994. So I'm now the old guy in the office, which, okay. I guess that's just the way life goes. So it is interesting now being more or less the person who's been here the longest and who's been able to see, as far as when people talk about trends, when they ask about what's going on in student life. And I certainly am not an expert, but certainly have had an opportunity, at least on this campus, to watch how things have changed. Second thing is an adjunct professor. So I've taught in several different departments, and I'm currently in nutrition and family sciences. So I have a lot of teaching experience. So I enjoy the fact that unlike a lot of the faculty and unlike a lot of the therapists that I work with, I have had the opportunity to work with students on two different levels. The more recent one, and I hope to get to this in a little while, or at least just sort of briefly, is a student organization called Active Minds. So, okay. So as far as talking about emotional mental health, I think my basic approach today is, I mean, I'm not certainly going. I'm hoping that I will raise for each person, raise your level of awareness a little bit, get us just have a little bit more of a conversation. Um, when people say things to me like, well, I'm not a psychologist, it's like, okay, but you know, there are some fields, some occupations where you don't pick it up by sitting around and being around other people and listening. I mean, you have to study that um, academically. And it's not that, of course, people like me don't study. We go to school and we take classes, but as anybody knows, therapy is such an interpersonal enterprise, and so there are a lot of people um, that are in the community. There are a lot of faculty, there are staff members that may not necessarily ever want to become therapists, but in my experience, particularly, I'm gonna be careful what I say, but it's a generational thing. A lot of the particularly younger instructors today seem really mental health savvy and that they respond very well to the students, you know, um, and they make our job easier. Even the police that we have on our campus are mental health trained so that when they encounter a student, particularly after hours, where there's something going on that isn't just mental health related, but the student has done something that to get the police involved, that um, they seem to handle that pretty well. And we certainly, with emotional mental health, we know that um, it's a big part of wellness. It's a big part of our identity, and that stress can take a toll on emotional well-being. We all know that we have shared a common experience for the last year and a half, which has in some ways made life worse, but in some ways, COVID, I feel like, has helped. I think there's been more conversation, not only just about physical health, but mental health. When people ask me, well, how do you think people have been affected by the pandemic? Well, I can give you some answers as far as what do I see going on, but the other part of me says, well, whether this is going to be over or at least largely over, and we're at a point where we can see daylight and we've been able to move forward as a society and put this largely behind us, that's a point where we're going to be able to more correctly assess the damage. Because if people are still in crisis intervention mode, then they're doing what needs to be done. And we don't tend to take a whole lot of time during that to sit back and go, well, how am I doing with this? Good mental health doesn't just mean the absence of a psychological disorder or a mental illness. It can include things like realistic goal setting, which hopefully that's something that we're able to contribute to our students, whether it's the specific class they're involved with or other aspects of school. It involves interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence, the interpersonal being a faculty, a staff, a student's ability to be able to get along with other people. How do you handle conflict? How do you respond when you make a mistake? This week, we're doing interviews with graduate students from the psychology counseling program, and we had the unusual circumstance yesterday where one of the applicants did not show up for his interview. So I'm trying to be a decent, non-judgmental person. Went, well, I'm sure there's a good reason, let's go on with the day. So apparently, while I was busy doing other things, a young man walked in about an hour and a half later saying that, that's when he thought his appointment time was. Okay, well, obviously he was wrong. What bothered me was not that he got the wrong time, it happens, or that he missed that, I mean, we can reschedule. What bothered me was the way that he responded, particularly to the front office personnel, after he learned you got the wrong time and you're not going to be able to have an interview today. So Intrapersonal intelligence, knowing yourself, knowing your limits. My guess is maybe all of you or a lot of you are busy, active, utilizing your different skills and talents, both on campus and maybe in other parts of life, your personal life. And one of the hard things about knowing your limit is that, and this has always puzzled me, why I went into psychology, because I'd like to call myself a math genius, but since I don't take math classes anymore, that probably would not be accurate. But I loved math from an early age. I love numbers. If you do the calculations correctly, okay, this is what we get. Numbers, we can quantify things. Okay, how much of this? Where when you talk about, well, you need to know your limit, it's like, well, that's not real specific. Where is that? Sometimes the way you know your limit is when you go past it. And at that point, when your mental and or physical health take a hit and you go, oh, okay, I guess this is where it is. It can include having a sense of perspective. It can include having a sense of humor about yourself. My students hear, among other pithy sayings, things like, it's good to take your school seriously. It's good to take your work seriously. But there's a difference between that and taking yourself seriously. Especially for some of our wonderful students that are so tightly wound. And when they make mistakes, can't laugh at it, can't forgive themselves, beat themselves up a whole lot more than we do. I mentioned to a student the other day about a situation they're dealing with. And I said, well, it sounds like the professor isn't worried about this. And they agreed, no. I'm like, okay, well, then why are you? Or if you're worrying more than your instructor, where's the value in that? Now, I don't think that you need to be in my field or work in student health to know that, and even before the pandemic, things are not getting better out there. Things are getting worse. That our students, particularly our next generation, are coming onto campus with more and more mental unhealth. And again, whether or not there's a presence of a psychological disorder or a diagnosis, and like I said, I don't think our UCA students are in most ways any different from the students that you guys have to other schools. I mean, we love all of them and we try to treat all of them the same, but both as a teacher and a therapist, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this is a fragile group. This is a group that in some ways thinks in some ways they have been exposed to and been able to grow up a lot quicker because of the access to information and maybe other things going on in the world, in conjunction with, we're telling them that, well, you're not really an adult yet, even if you're 18. We're increasingly telling people, whether it's true or not, well, maybe adolescence doesn't end at 18. Maybe it ends in early 20s, maybe mid 20s. That maybe graduating from college and then going back and living with your parents for a while doesn't mean you did anything wrong. That's just part of the life cycle now. At least that's what I tell myself, because my older daughter, like a lot of students, was in her senior year when COVID hit. So like a lot of kids, she left campus and came home. And unfortunately, because her first love has always been the theater, and we tell our children to find what you love and pursue what you love, getting a degree in theater performance suddenly didn't seem like such a great idea. So theater world is beginning to open up again, so that's good. But child joined the ranks of recently graduated unemployed and moving back home. Going back to what we're seeing again, as far as these numbers here from 2008 to 2017, where we have this 10-year period where we have these significant jumps in the percentage of students that report feeling not just anxiety, but overwhelming anxiety, not just at times having difficulty functioning. And that's just part of the human experience, but experience a level of depression where it makes it difficult to function, where it makes it difficult to even do simple things like go to class. The line I have up here about increasing in two ways, proportional and exponential. I'm not sure how much your college has grown in the last 5-10 years. UCA, when I first came years ago, we had about maybe 8,000 students, and I don't know, we have maybe 12, 13,000. I know they're not all full-time, but we definitely have a bigger student population. So you don't even have to be good at math to figure out that if everything else is equal, if you have increased your student population by 50%, then you have probably increased, among other things, your mental health problems among students by 50%, and you're going to have more students coming into the counseling center, more students going to the student health center. That was expected, but it hasn't just been proportional, it's been exponential. So rather than a 50% increase, a 50% increase in student enrollment has really resulted, especially lately, in 150% increase in the number of students requesting help, the number of students coming onto campus already with a diagnosed disorder, already with therapy experience. And whether you're a therapist, a faculty member, a staff member, administrator, or all of the above, like I said, my guess would be that you have increasingly interacted with students that evidence more self-harm, eating disorders, sexual assault, suicidal ideation, and that we're having more conversations with students that we didn't have a whole lot, maybe not so long ago. And I have no doubt y'all are doing your best. The faculty here at UCA, I think, are great. I think they care about the students. And I know one of the things that they have been very, very good about is advocating and encouraging students to utilize the counseling center. Anytime a student comes over here and sees me and they've been referred, recommended by an instructor, I always ask the student if you would consider doing me a small favor. Because of course the instructor knows that once the student comes over here and begins the process of counseling, the instructor, well-meaning, cannot or should not follow up with me the next day and say, I just want to know if they came for their appointment. I can neither confirm or deny anything. So the reason that I ask my students who have been referred by faculty or staff or administration to do me a little favor is they don't have to do this, but if you would, next time you go back to class or whatever, if you have a moment or send an email, would you consider letting that faculty, that professional staff, whoever, letting them know that you appreciate their recommendation and that you went? I promise you, 98% of the time, they will not ask you follow-up questions. They know that's your personal business, but I said, a lot of times we have these wonderful people on campus that they have these intense conversations and then they suggest the student to utilize a resource and then they try to stay out of the student's business, but they don't really know what happened. There's no real script for that kind of situation. We do have some resources we've developed to help faculty, but it's kind of hard to tell sometimes when you've had a conversation with a student and you've encouraged them, again, whether it's counseling or something else. Me being the impatient person I am, I'm always expecting that, well, if I've encouraged a student to go see this person or to do X, by the next class period, if I walked up and say, well, how'd that go? I expect to get a report. And of course, as I've learned over the years, that in more cases than not, well, I'm still thinking about it. Okay. We have a significant increase in students reporting suicidal ideation. I will be honest with you, I've been providing therapy to college students even before I came to UCA, so probably at least 30 years by this point. There's very little at this point in my career that's going to shock me, startle me, throw me off my game. Well, a little bit here and there. Makes me nervous, but I don't think any therapist, no matter how good we are, I don't think we ever get to a point where we are relaxed when we are in the presence or aware of a student that has gotten to the point where they're not just depressed, they're not just upset, they're not just anxious, that their level of distress has taken them to a darker place where the idea of dying, whether or not they intend to follow through, has increasingly become a viable option. So suicide is very difficult to predict. And depressed individuals do not necessarily verbalize suicidal intention. We try as best as we can on this campus to reach out to our students, to provide services. Like I said, I think we have a wonderful group of people at this university, especially the faculty, that care about the students, and they do what they can to help out and contribute and recommend and encourage students to use different resources. And sadly, every once in a while, we have a student on this campus that for whatever's going on, they take their own life. Even the best suicide. Oh, yay, the meeting now has unlimited minutes. All right, I hope you guys cleared your schedule for the rest of the day, because we're just, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so even the best suicide predictors account for only a small amount of variation in suicidal behavior. I will say one thing that hopefully will be a little bit helpful, and is probably not something you haven't heard before. Something that when I do workshops and I talk with students, I talk with faculty, and even with the graduate students, remind them that when we're talking about a student who is thinking about suicide, who is thinking about ending their life, there are two different issues here. One is suicidal ideation. The thought is there. The thought may have been there for a while. It may have been there at some point. It went away and now it's back. But we've got them at a point where things are bad enough where that is now an option that they're looking at, that they're considering. The second is suicidal intention. Fortunately, like I said, I wish we had a way to just nail these predictions, but fortunately, in most cases, when students or other individuals verbalize ideation, it's pretty uncommon that there is also intention. So even though it's a little scary, it's a little hard to figure out what to do. If you're not a therapist and you're going, I really want to help, but I'm not really sure like what I'm supposed to do, or what do I say to this student? I'll give you a real brief sort of overview of how, or at least one way that we approach a student who has reported suicidal ideation. I forget who came up with this, because I'd like to give them credit. I also like to ask them, really? You know, you came up with SLAP, that was your acronym? Okay. It is easy to remember though, not just because it's only 4 letters, but SLAP. Okay. SLAP, S, specificity. The more specific the plan, the higher the risk. Lethality, the greater the lethality, again, the higher the risk. Availability, how quickly could a person implement a plan? So when they talk about suicidal ideation, you are not going to make things worse at all. You're probably going to, like I said, definitely help when you ask them, okay, so when you think about this, tell me a little bit about what do you think about? I want to know how specific, because again, the less specific, the smaller the risk. What are we talking about here? I had one the other day. He said, I just think if I walked out in the street tomorrow, got hit by a bus and died, I don't think it would be so bad. Okay. It's unfortunate to have a student having that kind of experience and saying those kind of words. On the other hand, I'm encouraged by the fact that after discussing the issue further, the student does not have a plan, does not have anything that they would use, is simply saying, you know, if an accident happened, well, I guess it would happen. Doesn't sound like, though, that this is somebody who's going to take any steps. Again, availability, how quickly a person can implement their plan. So there are some times where, as faculty, staff, therapists, we get involved with the student as far as making some agreements, and that may include, oh, so you got some razor blades in your dorm room. Okay, well, I need you to hand them over to your roommate, to your RA. Can we do that? All right. And then the proximity of helping resources. So, you know, what particular strategies can we use? All right, so I want to go for a little bit of audience participation, and let me pull up here. No, that's not what we want. Okay. Maggie, are you still there?
Yes, still here, still listening.
So I think I told you before, not real technically skilled, still haven't done a whole lot of it, including teaching, haven't done a whole lot of Zoom. So one of the things I tend to forget, and especially because we want people to feel comfortable, is if they want to be involved but not necessarily be visible and participate, cool, not a problem. But you have some people that are like, yeah, but I'll use the chat function to ask a question. So do you have the capability of seeing that, or do I have to make sure I'm taking a look at it?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was trying to get my mute off.
Okay.
Yeah, we can all see it in
Okay.
the chat. There's already like 2 just from me checking my audio earlier. So we can send to, I mean, everybody can send to everyone. So if you want to open that up for participation purposes, you can do that.
Okay. Great. Now I got to figure out how to do that.
It should just be on your over towards your settings. It should just, since you're on your desktop or laptop, it should just be on like towards your right,
Okay.
kind of close to the record button.
Oh, there are a lot more people here than I thought. I had when I screen shared, my screen went tiny. I'm wondering if I have to do the, well, because I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing a lot more names, but oh gosh.
And I mean, if you want to open that up, I don't care to pop in and say what they say if you want to do that.
If you don't mind helping me, because I'm not seeing it, if you could be
Yeah, no,
my
I got you.
special friend assistant, thank you. Okay. All right, so let me go back to, and again, if there are questions that so far I missed, I apologize. Make sure we get to those. In this scenario, a student shows up to class today, and at the end of class, waits for all the other students to leave the room. The student then tells the instructor they've been very depressed lately and have struggled with thoughts of killing themselves. So just kind of want to hear from the rest of y'all, or at least some of you all, as far as the student and as far as yourself, what happens next as far as what, where, when, and how? What do we do when you have, and whether you've had this experience or not, we encounter this kind of student in your classroom. Where do we send them? What do we tell them? Is there a protocol in the faculty handbook? Is there something that the faculty can utilize as a way to kind of help them guide that conversation, and particularly make sure that we communicate to that student what that student can do, so that we can, again, contribute and help as much as we can, while at the same time not taking responsibility for that person and not playing the role of therapist.
Well, and I will say, like, coming from the chat, you know, one of our faculty members, she said she would start with, I don't know what to say right now, but I'm so glad you told me. And we do have a person of concern option within within our, you know, in our college and our handbook and whatnot. We had a situation occur like this last, I mean, I'm sure we've had it before previously, but we had this occur last semester, and they go straight to the VP of Student Services, and they get help through a counseling service that's really close to campus. It's not on campus, but it's, I mean, within walking distance, driving distance.
Okay. So in that situation, I finally figured out the chat window. Okay, thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Megan. Okay, so we have an individual on campus that we would, you know, walk them over to, make a phone call. I mean, in other words, we're going to be able to hand this student off to someone else. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Not leaving them alone, especially if, you know, they are in that sense suicidal, for sure.
Okay. Maggie, have you encountered that particular situation with one of your students?
Yes, it was. I mean, he actually had not told me personally. I just I was in the loop. He told me about it later because he's in my education program, but that he had told I want to say that it was a staff member, just so, you know, it wasn't during class or after class or anything like that, but he had told the staff member, and they had you know, taken him straight to Jason, who was our student services, our VP at the time. And so now we would go to Zeta, and then they will kind of work with that student to get them taken care of further.
Okay. Let me put you on the spot again. Is there something in your syllabus that explains to the student, in the event that there's a mental health situation going on, how they can or could approach you as an instructor, what available campus resources that they can utilize? Okay, somebody.
Yeah,
Okay.
Meg. You see the chat now.
Okay, yeah, I actually have never thought to include that. Oof. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah, we don't have that built into our syllabus. They can look, there's like contact info and whatnot in the catalog that they could look through, and even like the handbook to
Okay.
know where to go if they do. That's one thing.
Right. Okay. Well, I've kind of jumped ahead in the slides, but that's all right. I probably would have done that anyway. Something I meant to mention before was that, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm also a faculty member. I never want to be guilty of telling another faculty member how to run their class, how to design their syllabus. Oh, you need to put that in. I don't think that that's my business. I can tell you that on our campus, I mean, being in the counseling center for a while, I was ahead of the game, and I've always had something in the syllabus about counseling services. And there's a point where now, and again, I'm not sure how much y'all are experiencing this or whether that's something to come, but and I understand, the development of a syllabus in order to communicate more clearly with our students as far as the course, as far as the grading, as far as campus resources. It wasn't that long ago, at least it doesn't feel like, that I was an undergraduate and I would show up to class and my syllabus was maybe 1 or 2 pages. And my department chair sent a template at the beginning of the semester encouraging us to take as much as we wanted to, but to make sure that our syllabus had at least a certain number of ingredients, statements, policies. And I looked at her syllabus, scrolled down and went, wow, 19 pages. And you're going to give that to people the first day. Now, my situation is a little bit different because I'm in the unique situation where, and I've not always been the only one, but I'm the only one consistently in the counseling center who also teaches both undergraduate and graduate students. So there's a reason why not only I have a little blurb in the syllabus about counseling, but how I handle it so that I can make sure the students are clear. Ethically, I am to avoid as much as I can dual relationships. So I pretty much kind of play the role that I think, a lot of instructors do, is I'm here to listen, I'm here to try to help, but if you really need to talk to somebody, we're going to get somebody else that you can go talk to. I mean, obviously I'm licensed, I'm trained, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want to enter into that dual relationship. I want to keep the relationship as a teacher and a student. So, and I'm flattered when a student says, well, could I come see you? I tell them the same thing. It says in the syllabus, I do not see current students for personal counseling. Once the semester's over, that's a different ballgame. But again, one of the ways that our syllabi have been made more consistent, and again, I don't want to sound negative because, there are things where, yeah, that's probably good. I mean, that, and part of that is it's just where we are as a culture is, I don't remember as a student having a syllabus where it pointed out certain resources on campus. I was expected to find those. We're increasingly being asked and sometimes required to put those things into the syllabus so that as a faculty member, particularly somebody who's interacting with the student, that we are communicating with them. Here's another one. And like I said, anybody can answer this if they want to. If a student, instead of suicidal ideation, if a student believes, or it's pretty clear that in some way they have experienced harassment from another student, staff, faculty member, particularly like, again, campus related, and they share that. And again, sometimes because the instructor may be the person on campus that they know the best, that they have, you know, a decent relationship or maybe a very good relationship. So they come in, and again, and this is not a knock, but if, you know, as you don't have a counseling center, that's not something that people are going to go, well, we could go over there. It's, you know, it's going to be like pretty much like certainly I was as a student was, well, I'll go to my professors. What happens when a student discloses this kind of situation? Where do they go? And again, you don't have to answer that. My question is going to be just like the last issue. Does your syllabus include information about, in the event that something like this occurs, what do they do? Where do they go? What link do they, well, as you can see in my syllabus, and again, this is universally adopted. This is the way it's written in everybody's syllabus, pretty much word for word, including the link at the bottom. So that increasingly, again, as instructors and even staff members, we're being encouraged and sometimes required to utilize the classroom in addition to teaching them the knowledge and having discussions and grading their performance, is making sure that they're aware of when things aren't going so well. What can they do? Maggie,
Is go ahead. I was actually going to ask you a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Is that something that you and your team at the counseling center put together for all the faculty to put in their syllabus, or is this just
no? This came from higher up.
Gotcha.
So, and without getting into too much, not because I mean, it's a matter of public record now, but years ago, the university was involved in a lawsuit. And while fortunately the university was found not guilty of the accusations that were made against the administration, the instructor was fired, rightfully so. But one of the ways that the university got its hand slapped was the fact that even though the student had not been able to prove in court that other than what the instructor had done to her, and again, you know, the instructor being fired, the student really went after a lot of other individuals and really did her best to try to prove that there were other people on campus, not necessarily that had harassed her, but that had made the experience far more horrible by their dismissal of her or not knowing where to send her, so forth. While she was not able to prove any kind of trauma, they did say it should be clear to the faculty, to the staff, that when a student approaches them with this kind of situation, you should have a clear understanding of what does the university expect you to do. You know, and so we have eventually with the university, and again, as the universities get bigger, they start adding, you know, and you know, in smaller schools, we tend to wear a lot of hats, and bigger we get, we start, you know, moving people into different positions and they wear fewer hats. We not only have a university attorney, but eventually we also hired a second attorney, and specifically their area is Title IX. And that is the individual on campus that the student will go to. Sometimes I have walked the student or another faculty member as a faculty member or a therapist. You know, when in doubt, well, I'm going to be careful what I say, and I don't want, like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm being preachy. But I think whenever you have a doubt, whenever you're just not sure, I think the best thing to do is to say, well, why don't we go over there right now? Or at least let's talk about, again, let's at least make sure the student is aware of the resources. Understandably, with Title IX, things can get pretty complicated, and unfortunately, there are students that will tell you that all this stuff does is makes it even more difficult when somebody feels that they have been harassed by, again, another person at the university. Maggie, I'm going to pick you out again. Do you have this in your syllabus? A building emergency plan?
No, that's not on our syllabus.
Okay. All right. Now,
Once
again,
again, like in the, once again, in our handbook and whatnot is where a lot of that
right.
is listed.
Okay.
Accessible to all of our students online.
Yes, absolutely. So. And again, this is not a prescription. This is not, what do you mean you don't have this? Again, this is just to show you the level that we've gotten to where whether, I mean, again, the students are aware this information is not just in a syllabus, it has other sources. And so it doesn't have to be in the syllabus. We're just at a point where, well, whether you think it should be or not, I did not go, I was told this has to be in your syllabus. So again, because the syllabus is something that the students utilize, or at least we like to think that they utilize it, they look at it, they consult with it, that has become more than just a layout of what are we going to do this semester, what are we going to cover, what kind of assignments, but there's some other things that are going on as a student that we want to make sure that you're aware of. Again, you can argue it both ways. Are we helping students to be more aware? I don't know. I think we are with some of them. I don't think some of them need me to put something in the syllabus for them to know the kind of resources that we have. So I don't particularly enjoy that every year my syllabus for each class seems to get lengthier and lengthier and lengthier because the higher ups have said, you got to put this in, you got to put this in, you got to put this in. All right. So, and again, well, like Maggie, like you said, I mean, the students have that information, just the way that it's been, and like I said, explained to us was, yeah, great, but we want them to have that information in the syllabus. We want to have that information in a number of different places, including the classroom. And so like some faculty, my initial thought was, yeah, but that's not really I was hired to teach. And, and yeah, I can point those things out when I have a conversation, but do I really have to put that stuff in the syllabus? Well, the answer, again, as you expect, is, at least where I am, yes, you do. Okay, so let me mention, for example, here's something that we have on our campus that has been very helpful. So when we have a student that we become aware of, however, we become aware of that there has been an incident, and again, it isn't necessarily a student who is depressed and suicidal. I'm just curious, have any of y'all in the last year or two had a situation in a classroom where, whether you witnessed it or whether a student came to you to tell you that there's a student in that room that is making at least one other person really uncomfortable?
Hey, James. Yes, we actually did have an incident recently in one of our courses where a student was making everyone, including the instructor, very uncomfortable with some behavior. So basically what the instructor did is he first reached out to his division chair,
Good.
who advised him to fill out the behavioral incident report form through our learning management system.
Excellent.
And so once that happens, that behavioral incident form goes to the provost, it goes to the president, it also goes to our VP of Student Services. So we were able to get a bunch of different people involved with that. And we're able to all kind of work together to rectify the situation.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm telling anybody else what to do, but I think at this point, small, medium, big school, this is something that we should have. And again, my experience with and being a faculty member is faculty members care about the students. They care about their well-being, but they weren't hired or trained. So when something like this happens, and even worse, when the student makes even the instructor uncomfortable, what happens? Like I said, they go to the division chair. When an instructor reaches out to me, we have the same conversations. Well, talk to your department chair. There's probably an incident report you can fill out, and so let those who are more involved in this kind of work with you. You're not alone, and if you don't feel comfortable meeting with that student or letting them come back to class until you've had some conversations, okay. And again, knowing that you have the administration is going to back you up, so that not only you're able to do what, is helpful, but, while that's not our number one priority, we do have to cover our behind in addition to providing help to the students. So there may or may not be in your future campus counseling center. I think that eventually a school becomes big enough, it winds up becoming part of the campus. Simply because, I hate to say this, to some extent, the liability is just, we in an increasingly litigious society where, right or wrong, we've got more and more parents and sometimes students that just expect the campus to have certain resources right there for the students, and including whether it's a counseling center or if it's the department office where there is an individual and not just the dean of students will talk to that student. There is somebody trained and licensed that those students go to provide therapy, to provide guidance, and when appropriate, particularly with students' permission, are able to communicate with faculty so we can figure out what's the best way that we can help our student. We have an extremely busy counseling center. We're actually overwhelmed, and I realized by saying that, I can't think of too many people I know that are in a department or workplace right now where they're saying, oh, sorry to hear that, because we got more than enough people. Most of us are probably doing more with less. And there are certain ways to protect the staff where we have said no and continue to say no. For example, if you look down number 3, we do not test for disabilities. It's unfortunate we don't have that service to provide to the students, especially when the students, I don't want to say entitled, but they're used to having all of these ancillary things on campus that they can utilize. And so when they find out, well, we don't have that one, it's like, what, but we do not have the person power for that. So, okay. One of the things that we developed earlier on when I first, and not like I showed up and I was, no, it's just when being here over a period of time and getting to see how we've developed, and again, with the faculty, They're very supportive, and obviously we want to be able to say thank you for working with us. Thanks for keeping us in business, because there are particular departments that, you know, they send a lot of students to us. So we have, among other resources, we developed a while back a referral resource so that faculty can become familiar with, again, if you've got counseling services on your campus, or if you don't, just, so here's an example within the resources of a decision tree. Because, problem is not just if you're not really that well versed in mental health, but unfortunately, like a lot of things, there's no script, and certainly not foolishly suggesting, you follow something word for word. But sometimes what's part of the difficulty is not only knowing what to say, not only because this may be an unfamiliar experience, or what to say, you're just not exactly sure how to say it to that student so that it sounds good. It doesn't sound like you meant well, but oh, okay. So again, this is in the PowerPoint. I think there's a link somewhere. Oh, okay. Let's see, behavior, we did that. Okay, yeah, we have additional resources that and one of the things that the counseling center that we're able to do is, with each beginning of school year, particularly with new faculty orientation, that a representative from the counseling center is able to interact with the faculty and just talk a little bit more about if and when. Understandably, anytime you do an orientation, you feel bad for the people going through it because they're getting hit with all sorts of information, so mainly we just want to make sure they're aware that we're here, but not just that we're here, that, here are some things that you can look at as far as recognizing a distressed student, responding to a distressed student, how to make a referral. Again, so you've got a little bit more of a script in your head, a little bit more prepared. In addition to, I guess, for lack of better words, training the faculty, enabling or empowering, or however we want to put it, where we're working with the faculty, again, so that we're not putting them in a situation that we shouldn't, or they're not comfortable, but helping them. I always think of the example where a well-meaning instructor on occasion has reached out to one of us, or maybe me, via email or a phone call, doesn't matter. Some way they have reached out to me to explain to me that they have concerns about a student's mental health based on classroom behavior, maybe based on what the student wrote in an assignment, maybe something else. And more than one occasion, the conversation has gone from that to, so can you all reach out to this student? I'll give you the information and reach out to them. And we tell them, no, we're not going to do that. That's not how we work. We're going to talk about how you are going to respond to the student, because the student disclosed to you, not to us. The student knows you, they don't know us. So even though that's a difficult conversation to have, the potential for it going well is much greater with a faculty member that they know, they probably like, they probably trust, rather than some random dude calling them and saying, well, your professor has some concerns. Not likely that they're going to go, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I guess I'll set up an appointment. And unfortunately, pretty likely they're going to come back to class and I think I'll be real happy with you. So in addition to the faculty, we have, among other resources, this is a more recent addition to campus. We have a student organization that focuses on mental health. Active Minds is a national organization. This lovely young lady here is the one who founded it. um, largely as a response to a way of honoring her brother who had committed suicide. And so with this group on campus, we have increasingly, it has grown, and we are increasing the number of students in this organization that want to focus on mental health, that want to educate other students about mental health, that want to, have those conversations. And obviously, well, I mean, the students tend to interact with each other much more than interact with anybody else. So again, we're not training them to be therapists, and we're not telling them to go out and do therapy, but I always say the same thing to a student, to a faculty member, to a resident hall coordinator, whoever. Y'all are on the front line, not us. I'm up here in my nice office, and when a student comes to see me, a lot of times it is because there have been positive conversations with somebody on campus before they came here, which we are deeply appreciative of. And again, and a little bit of this has been to respond to the fact that things have seemingly become so overwhelming, is to really get the students more involved with this particular organization. And they have taken this and run with it, and they have implemented a number of programs on campus, brought in a few speakers. And so, like I said, they pretty much have taken over this and really doing a great job with creating a lot more discussion and awareness about mental health and mental illness and all of the things in between. So I offered to be the faculty advisor. I mean, it's sort of seemed natural that somebody in the counseling center would step forward to do that. And again, fortunately, because these students are real gung-ho, I really haven't had to do a whole lot, except kind of sit back and be really proud of them. So I want to be mindful of, actually, it is 12 o'clock right on the dot. So I believe we were advertised to go till noon. So I want to avoid being a hypocrite when I say, when you get to the end time, you stop and you don't hold people over. So at this point, let me officially close the presentation, but I have put in my schedule to be available for a while. Whether or not that is something that any of you want to take advantage of, I'm going to go ahead and pop the chat window open a little bit more, so that, and again, if it's verbally, that's fine. If somebody wants to send me a message, and I don't have to tell people who you are, I can just sort of read it out. But basically, I'm going to hang around in case anybody wants to have any questions or discussion or whatever. If not, if you are done, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and attention. And if you ever feel the need, and even on campus, to reach out to me or other folks here, please do not hesitate. All right, thank you.
Well, I guess before we kind of close, does anybody have any questions for him, for Jim before we cut off? All right, guys. Well, Jim, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it, especially as we are starting to hopefully have more students on campus, coming out of a crazy COVID year, the previous year. So we just really appreciate you kind of talking about what UCA has and just with the knowledge you have. So we appreciate it a lot.
Okay. Like I said, I appreciate thank you. One last housekeeping thing, and like I said, I know y'all transitioning something else. Am I supposed to turn the recording off, or do you do that? Or because if y'all are
you're good. Once you end the meeting, it will, it should send you, it'll probably send both of us, since I was the the host. But I'll check in with you later today or
Thank you.
tomorrow or maybe Monday to make sure
Okay.
it records.
All right. I just didn't want it to record anything it's not supposed to record, but
Oh, you're good.
okay.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you all. Take care.